Hello everybody, Amer back with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time we've got Season 1, Episode 2 of the Revival, which is called The System. This is another remake of one from the original, from a Season 3 episode. If you want to have a look at that review, you can have a look for it right over here. So in this one, we start in Mexico, where we see the two baddies of this episode, who we soon learn are Frank Marley and Bob Connors, watch a guy head into a sauna, which Connors promptly blows up. According to IMDb, this character's name is Weber, the guy who got blown up. Something I've noticed is that every cold open in the Revival does actually have somebody dying, interestingly enough. Jim is at a football game and uses spy speak to get instructions from a locker through a peanut vendor. We learn that the guy who was killed was going to testify against Connors, which is why they offed him. The mission? Get Marley to turn on Connors and testify, as he's the only one with enough information to put Connors away. Marley runs a casino hotel in the Bahamas as part of the organization, and off the team goes. After a brief apartment scene, that is, discussing some of the plans. As in the original, the team starts by having Max win big at the craps table using loaded dice. This catches Marley's attention. Max is brought to his office. Max tells him that he's a contract killer and Marley was his intended target, but he decided he would be better off protecting Marley and joining his entourage, and he knows who the replacement killer is. Marley doesn't buy it, but is clearly concerned given that Max mentions that a scrambler was used for communications, as Marley and Connors do whenever they need to talk. Marley thinks about it a bit, then calls Connors using his scrambler device. Fortunately, Grant has tapped into it, so Nick gets to imitate Connors after some practice and use of a mouthpiece, reassuring Marley that no one would dare hurt him and he's going to be away for a bit. So a guy named Anderson is coming to audit the operation, just routine, but it further sets Frank on edge. Meanwhile, Casey starts gambling and says that she's a friend of Connors, wanting casino credit. She playfully tells Marley that she's here to kill him. At the casino tables. Har har har. Marley makes a quick call and finds out she's a system player who's a notorious loser. He gives her a kit for $5,000, which she readily loses. Grant channels the spirit of his father and gets into the hotel's basement, then goes through air ducts to get to the casino vault room, which is protected by an intricate security system with very cool lasers, waiting for the next money count at 10 p.m. Once the count is done, Grant taps into the security camera feed while Nicholas, as Marley, distracts the guard for a moment, then uses a very cool mirror to neutralize the lasers. He gets in, cracks the safe, and starts putting money into the vault bag. But unfortunately, there's a big problem where the mirror he's using to block the lasers slips, requiring Nick and Jim to cut the main power for 5 seconds to barely give him enough time to reset the mirror in its place and recover. Jim arrives as Anderson the auditor, rattling Marley's cage once again, and discovers the extra $25,000 in the vault, which of course can't be accounted for. Marley reaches out to Max for protection as he realizes that things aren't going his way. Meanwhile, Nick puts the final touches on a Marley mask. Casey asks Marley to okay a check for $2,500, which she deftly replaces with a substitute one for $25,000. The cashier double-checks the amount with Marley, who fortunately nods his assent. As Marley goes down to the vault for the next 10 p.m. count with Jim and Max in tow, Nicholas as Marley goes to the office and calls for Carl the blackjack dealer, strong-arming him into making sure Casey wins $25,000 at his table, which he does. On the way back to his office, the real Marley gets shot at but is protected by Max. When he arrives, he finds Jim, Carl, and the cashier all lined up with the evidence of all his shenanigans. Marley confronts Casey, who tells him the whole thing, including Max's protection, is being set up by Connors to take him out. Marley quickly goes to a regular phone, not the scrambler, figuring he needs to move fast before Connors does. He calls a befuddled Connors directly and tells him he'll see him at the trial, as he races down to the vault and locks himself inside, contacting the federal prosecutor and setting off the alarm for the local police. Mission accomplished, and the team power walks away. I'm going to give this episode a grade of B, maybe kind of on the border of B+. There's too many callbacks to count, frankly, because this is is a not very faithful remake of the original script. They changed up a few things here and there, almost all of which, in my opinion, make the episode better. I gave the review for the original, I gave that one a grade of C. And really the biggest thing is James Sloyan as Frank Marley. In the original episode, we had James Patterson playing the character of Johnny Costa. Essentially exactly the same character, same setup, same idea, everything. And I mentioned in the original review that this character, the villain, drives the episode. And it was really lacking with James Patterson, who I'm sure was a very nice guy and a decent actor. But he was one of those actors who just didn't seem like a good fit for this show. And there were lots of such actors in the original series who I said that about. Not everybody is a great fit for every kind of show. And James Patterson just wasn't, especially in this episode. He did have another outing in a much better episode called The Double Circle, where he was better, but I think that was because he was paired with Jason Evers, who was absolutely incredible. But regardless, getting back to this, Johnny Costa, as James Patterson as Johnny Costa, completely seemed like a fish out of water. He didn't look and feel and act like he belonged in that role of a casino boss. This is another example, just going back to the original series. There was an episode in season 6 actually called Casino. And in that one, we had Jack Cassidy as the casino boss. He was lively. He was active. He looked like he belonged there with his mannerisms and his dialogue. James Sloyan is not quite at that level, but he does at least exude this kind of feel to me, this aura that, you know what, yeah, he belongs there. I've always really liked him as an actor, and I think he's a really, really good fit for this role of Frank Marley here. Also good, I like the way that technology is used. We've already established that there's going to be better technology in the Revival series. Of course there is. One of the things that we see here, which we're going to continue to see, is the mask making is sort of automated and computerized. You know, where basically coordinates are fed into a computer and a mask kind of gets generated based on physical head scans and scans of skin tones and things like that. Now, back in the late 80s, that may have seemed kind of far-fetched, you know, but if you really worked on it, it would be really possible based on what computers could do. Here in the 2020s, we're getting really close, I think, to developing that kind of technology. It doesn't really seem that unusual in the least, frankly. Also, and I mentioned this before in the review for The Killer, Nicholas has to practice Connors' voice. And when he actually impersonates Connors, he puts some mouthpieces, at least one, it might have been more than one, in his mouth to kind of adjust the shape of his mouth. That's actually really realistic because, you know, your voice obviously depends on the shape of your mouth and the way your tongue is and all of that sort of thing. So it actually makes sense that you would have to make such an adjustment if you're trying to mimic the voice of somebody who sounds really different than you. I like that. I really, really do. Also, Nicholas has to practice Frank Marley's signature for certain things. That is very, very realistic. And that is a callback. Roland Hand, who did exactly the same thing in the original. Now, in that one, Martin Landau did not have to actually impersonate James Patterson or Johnny Costa, the character, but you know, the IMF went about it a different way. The plot was slightly different, so that wasn't really necessary. But again, it's also kind of neat as a bit of a callback there. And I like the way that they went about it. It's not automatic, nor should it be. Also, the best part, certainly, of the original episode and this one, in terms of the actual action of the episode, is, of course, the entire sequence where Grant, obviously in the original version it was Barney, where they actually get in and put extra money in the vault. In the original, it was different. Barney used the awesome reverse ratchety screwdriver. Remember that? And he used a really, really long claw with some gadgets on it in order to crack the safe. And then he had to kind of take the bag and bring it over to him because he's up in the air duct, and then he had to put it back. And there was a very, very well done kind of tense sequence. This is different, but I think that this one is better. And again, you could kind of argue it both ways. Again, this one really benefits from the enhanced technology that we had in the 80s. So I can understand it if somebody would say that, nah, the original one that Barney did was better. That's fine. I just like this one. It's neat the way that Grant uses the mirror to kind of redirect the laser away to neutralize that, and also just that brief distraction so that they can make the adjustment on the closed circuit TV that the guard is using to keep an eye on the vault. That was really, really cool. Like that. What was not so great in this episode was the unnecessary dialogue. In the original, obviously, and I've mentioned this before, the team, the writers, it's not really the team, but the writers had the team focus on the action in terms of showing us the story and doing the exposition that was required. You know, they go from here to there and here and back to there, and that's how we kind of follow the story. Here, there's a lot of extra dialogue, and you're going to notice it more and more as the series goes on in the revival. For example, in the beginning, Jim and Casey, get prepared for Casey to go in and talk to Frank Marley. And Jim mentions to her, make sure that Max is in the clear before making your move. Well, come on, she should know that, right? They've talked about that in the apartment scene. That was just like, that just seemed really, really unnecessary. There are a few other moments like that smattered throughout the episode where it just seems like, this is something that really doesn't need to be said. The IMF should just know that everything's going to plan, and, they don't have to treat us viewers like goldfish or morons, that, we can't follow what's going on. Perhaps, I can forgive the new producers a little bit in that, they're trying to attract a new audience. And that's not something that was very easy to do in the 1980s. There were a lot more choices for entertainment, especially on television, than there were in the 70s. But still, it just seems unnecessary, a lot of the things that are said here and there. I'm not going to drag the grade down too far because of it, but it definitely is noticeable, and there's not really enough in this plot, I wouldn't say, to drive this up to an A to where the killer that episode was. But like I said, I'm comfortable with that grade of B, close to a B+. And I think that that's about it. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. It's much appreciated. Love the fact that we're able to, just dive in, head first into the revival. It's going to be a lot of fun as we get going, that's for sure. Thank you again. Please like this review video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so that you get informed of when new reviews come out. And please leave your comments about this episode and other episodes as well. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.